Hi, everybody. This is Robert Middleton in Action Plan Marketing and my Being in Business interview with Paul Zelizer. Hi, Paul. Nice to see you again.
Hey, Robert, take two, right? Click.
So a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Paul, and after it was all said and done, it was a great interview with great stuff, and it didn't record.
Well,
So,
like I said, Robert, just gives us more chance to hang out, so I'm not upset about it, right?
right, and we talked last week about some other stuff, and Paul might be one of the best connectors for small businesses right now. Let me tell you a little bit about Paul, just from my experience. I learned about Paul through a Facebook group called Wisdompreneurs, and Wisdompreneurs was um, uh, mostly independent professionals sharing about business ideas, but also, the spiritual aspect, the wisdom aspect of business, the social impact of business. And so it got to be, there were huge numbers of very interesting questions and interesting people. And then it sort of spiraled, well, I wouldn't say spiraled out of control, but it got really big. How many people were in that group?
Oh, we were up to about 25,000 at one point, Robert. Yeah.
25,000. It was like the number of posts that were happening was just coming
It
fast.
was insane. It got really insane.
And then some people started to, as they do in social media, started to attack each other and stuff like this. And Paul sort of put on the brakes and said, we have to redo this. And he said, I'd rather have a small group focused on something instead of something that's out of control, even though it was kind of fun. And so it was rebranded as Awarepreneurs, and he put it behind a paywall, $10 a month, which is not a lot, but the membership shrunk considerably. But now he has really serious, committed people that are in there having really wonderful conversations, and it's really a fabulous community. And I opted out of it for a while, and now I just joined back in, and I've been out of circulation. I've been in social media marketing world for the last few days, and I'm going to get back into Awarepreneurs and join Paul's world again. So Paul, that's sort of that one thing, but tell us what you've been up to in your business. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us your life story.
My life story in 3 sentences, huh?
Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about some topics that are near and dear to our heart. And we might talk about some of the same things we talked last time. We talked a lot about values last time, which I think is worth revisiting. We were talking before we got on the call about the dark days of social media and how it's really a negative thing in so many ways, but there are positive sides, and I think it's something worth looking at. So your turn.
My turn. All right. Well, thanks for having me on the show, and I'm really excited. I love doing interviews, Robert. As you know, I have a podcast, and it's taking me to all kinds of good places, and I'm happy to share about that. But I'm a huge fan of deep dialogue. So just the short, very short version of my professional journey is I did 15 years in community mental health and got to do some fabulous things. I live here in New Mexico, in a very diverse state with lots of interesting things going on. But after about 15 years, I burned out and needed to reinvent myself. And I was reinventing myself right at about the same time as a friend of mine was reinventing himself. And he wrote a book, which did not so great, but the start of the conference, which has become a rock star conference called Wisdom 2.0. And the two of us got on social media, speaking of social media, got on Twitter in 2008, and suddenly, because there weren't that many people back in the day talking about how do we use social media to bring about social impact goals and conscious business, suddenly we found ourselves at Zappos in 2008 at the headquarters when Tony Hsieh and the leadership team were handing out t-shirts to their employees saying, thank you for making us $1 billion a year company. And we got to go to Google and find out about what's now called the Search Inside Yourself program, where they teach emotional intelligence and mindfulness to their employees. They've run like 60,000 people through that program. But back in the day, Google was playing their cards very close to their chest. They weren't telling many. Now there's a book and a Search Inside Yourself Training Institute. There's all sorts of things. But because of social media, got to connect with people, went to Facebook and learned about their compassion initiative and some of the research they were doing. And this conference called Wisdom 2.0 blew up. It's now a series of about 10 conferences around the world. I joined the marketing team and was the director of social media for Wisdom 2.0. And that kind of relaunched me in this whole direction of conscious business and marketing and social media that I've now been on for 13 years. So that's the short version of it. There's lots of, it wasn't very linear, but that's the short version of the story.
Yeah, as if we could plan exactly how it would go.
Oh boy, yes. Yeah, well, most of us in this space don't exactly have a linear journey, and mine's been as or more nonlinear than most people. So if you are listening and you're on a nonlinear journey, high five. I feel you, right?
Yeah. You know, I started my business in 1984, but 5 years before that, I was milking cows on a farm.
Oh, wow. Nice.
I didn't, I have a whole, I was living in a community and I did farm work and did woodwork. And then I moved to San Francisco and did a lot of personal growth stuff and started my business in 1984 and have been at it ever since. So
nice.
Who would have predicted? I had no idea what I was going to do when I grew up until I was 32 when I started my business. And
nice. Well, and you and Mark Silver, when I started 13 years ago, you and Mark Silver were some of the first people I found online that were talking about marketing with integrity, and it wasn't about hype or so much one strategy like Facebook ads are going to solve all your problems, or that
right.
There was a depth of the messaging that resonated with me, and I still am in touch and learn from you all and feel grateful to be in community with both of you.
Now, something that you're doing, Paul, is you have a podcast, and not just any podcast. It's becoming roaringly successful, and it's really probably your best vehicle so far for growing your business and also connecting with a lot of people, et cetera, et cetera. And you've interviewed, what, 108 people so far? Maybe you're up
111. We published our 111th episode. Every Tuesday we do an episode. And
wow.
Yeah, I'd widen back a little bit. I'm not, podcasting is the answer for everybody, is not quite the way I talk about it, Robert. What I do, I just sent out a newsletter this morning. And it's on the topic, the broader way I talk about it with my clients and my colleagues is I'm really encouraging everybody, when there's so much, people talk about the signal to noise ratio on the internet. There's a lot of noise out there, a lot of noise.
A lot of crap.
A lot of crap. And so what I am teaching my clients is what I call to have a featured marketing channel.
Yeah.
A featured marketing channel. And we've talked about it for you before we turned on this recording. It's been your newsletter. You've been sending out, I forget, how many 2 decades or something of a newsletter every week? Something crazy like that.
I'm going into my 23rd year.
23 years of Robert sending out a newsletter that's a featured marketing channel. And every Tuesday, Awarepreneurs, it's a podcast. We put out an episode, goes out at 5 a.m. every Tuesday Eastern time. Another episode drops. And what the generic idea is, a featured marketing channel means, number one, it's something that you put your highest quality attention on. Spiritual teachers have told us that attention is one of the most sacred resources we have. So rather than like, oh, Instagram's important. Oh, I'm over on LinkedIn. Now I'm going to put a lot of attention on my newsletter because somebody told me that's the thing. Email marketing is hot, or video that is, I call it marketing by shiny object. It will not get you where you want to go. I will say that again. Marketing by shiny object will not get you where you want to go. The idea of a featured marketing channel is basically just being intentional with your attention, right? For you, it's your newsletter. For me, it's my podcast. So that's the first key component of a featured marketing channel. It's a place where you're intentionally going to bring now, mine's changed over the course of 13 years. So you're not putting it in concrete and say it can never change if you learn by doing, but you don't change next week and then the week after that. In the 13 years of business, I first started doing long form blog posts, and I learned a lot doing them. And then I went to a Facebook Live, a video on Facebook show, which I did 3 days a week, which I learned a lot about, but it was ultimately I landed on podcasting for a lot of reasons. But the basic idea is for the entire 13 years of my business, even though they've changed 3 times, I've had a featured marketing channel, and I've watched a lot of my colleagues who go from thing to thing to thing. They have not gotten the traction that they really want. And when I look at it, it's like, yeah, you don't have that thing where you're consciously choosing to bring your best attention week after week. So that's the first part. The second part is you feature it on your website. If you go to Robert's website, you're going to see sign up for my zine. It's very prominent. You let everybody know this is where my highest quality attention is. And if you want to learn more before you hire me, in other words, in front of a paywall, then you let people know on your website. And the last part is you're really regular with it. You've been doing it every Tuesday, right? So it has a time and a place. Same thing, Awarepreneurs. If you go to awarepreneurs.com, you'll see there's a podcast. You'll see it's on the site. You'll see it's very prominently featured. And every Tuesday at 5 a.m., another episode will drop, unless it's like Christmas or New Year's or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty impressive. And 111, that's kind of a magic number, 111.
What happens now, Robert, this is really fun. I'm just posting on social media. Now what happens is like I get like 30 pitches a week for one episode. So now I'm in it's a little hard and a little awkward. I'm saying no 29 times a week for the one yes. And some of these people have awesome brands. And, once you start to have that channel and people feel you're regular, and they've got reviews. If you go to iTunes, you'll see there's more than 1 or 2 people are listening to this thing. So leaders in the space come to me and they're like, Paul, can I be on your podcast? We need to talk. And I'm like, whoa, it's a very privileged situation to be in.
Right.
And what it means for me is I get to be in networking conversations with people who have real businesses and making real money. And they're sending their friends who also have access to resources and are willing to invest with somebody who has that kind of a network. So I've been able to raise my prices and pick and choose clients and pick and choose people to be on my podcast in a way that somebody who doesn't have a featured marketing channel, they're oftentimes just scrambling, how do I get the next client?
Yeah, and as we talked about before we got on the call, several of your podcast people that you've interviewed are becoming clients.
I'm getting better. My conversion rate for it, it's not like I say, oh, I want that person as a client, I'm going to ask them to be on the podcast. But because I have this traction, I have a featured marketing channel, and it's in front of a paywall. You don't have to pay to listen to a podcast or to subscribe to Robert's magazine. But the benefits of an interview show is, and I didn't understand this back in the day. I used to think if somebody was, a significant leader in a space and they had many more followers or a bigger email list than I didn't understand why they might want to be in relationship with me. What I know now is almost everybody has that next thing. They're writing a book. They've got a retreat. They're launching a new product. They're doing a new online course. And every time we hit that milestone of launching the next thing, we need another round of a PR campaign, or we need more publicity. And I have a media channel. It's called a podcast. Basically, I own a radio station that's very niche for conscious business owners and social entrepreneurs. So when somebody has something new in that space, they're trying to get word out about their book, either they or increasingly they now have PR teams. Their PR people reach out to Paul Zelizer because Awarepreneurs is one of the podcasts that people actually listen to. And I say, that's great, but you hired a PR firm that doesn't really know anybody in that space. Can I help you get on a bunch of podcasts? Can I help you get the word out? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, great, pay me a little bit of money and I'll do my thing, right? We just hang out and talk to people in this space. And I know the podcasters and the people who have big email lists and the people who have put it on their social channels if they feel aligned. So people are increasingly willing to pay for that kind of help getting their message when it's in this space.
Yes, fantastic. So, the question I wanted to ask you that popped into my mind is, given you've interviewed all these people, and a lot of these people are in what you might call conscious businesses, people that are, they're not, let's say they're not petrochemical companies, to say the
They're
least.
not strip mining. Yes, exactly.
They're usually small companies doing really interesting things, trying to make a difference in the world, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So over the last couple years of doing these, you must have seen so many interesting ideas and approaches and mindsets and insights about what people have done in your business. And that can't help but affect you and your business as well,
It's
moving forward, right? It's like, wow, that's so inspiring. It's hard, it's like I was at Social Media Marketing World, as I said, and I heard 25 presentations in 3 days, and it's like, it's sort of overwhelming. You can't apply even a small percentage of it, nevertheless. So I'd like you to share, what are some of the amazing things you've heard, or the trends of things you've heard of what people are doing that's really powerful,
yeah.
that kind of thing. Just whatever pops into your mind about this from all these incredible interviews you've done.
This goes back to the conversation that disappeared into the ethers, Robert, a conversation about values.
Right.
The people who are inspiring me the most are not the people who are like the super polished, they've taken all the coaching around being an incredible speaker, or like they're wearing the nicest clothes, or they have the most beautiful website. Yeah, like that's all nice. But what really inspires me are the values. I'm learning to be able to listen for, go find people's values. People are being more explicit, especially in the conscious business and social impact entrepreneur spaces. People are being more direct. If you go to Awarepreneurs on our About page, what you'll see is not Awarepreneurs does this, this, and that. You see our 7 core values, right? So people are being more explicit, at least in this part of in the worlds I play in. Values is an increasingly important conversation. And if you look at, particularly for younger audiences, millennials and Gen Z, values, that's like off the charts in terms of what they're looking for when they're making decisions about who they're going to purchase from. What are your core values? Not how glitzy is your site, not how many followers do you have on Instagram. Okay, that's all whatever. But what are you really about? And do you have a vision for making the world a better place? And if so, what is that vision? And if I align for it, you may get me for a customer for life. If I don't align for it, doesn't matter how many Facebook ads you bombard me with, you're actually going to alienate me doing that if I don't feel like you and I have that same sense of hey, our world's in trouble, and some businesses are doing work to make it, tip it in the direction of making it better. And a lot of businesses is just continue single bottom line, all about the money. It's going to make it worse. And particularly for younger audiences, they know that.
Are you getting a sense of meeting with these people that, the realization of the terrible trouble the world is in, especially environmentally, is top of mind for a lot of people?
Especially for younger audiences, yes. And I love hanging. It's funny, I'm 52. In general, podcasting, the audiences who really dive deep into podcasting, they're younger, they're more educated, they're more oriented towards creativity and innovation, and they make more money. And I'm like, well, hell yeah, I love hanging out with people like that. So podcast, even though I'm not the youngest guy on the block, I'm like a fish in water. I love that audience. And a lot of the people that are doing really well and that I feel affinity for might not look for me, might not look like me. And I'm thinking of one particular woman. She's in her early 30s and doesn't look like me. She's from a different culture and is younger and comes from a very different background. But she says, you're like my brother from another mother. The values alignment is super clear. And she's an Inc. 30 under 30 entrepreneur. That's who I talk to these days. And I love hanging out with people who have that sense of like, I'm going to try new things. We have to innovate if we want life on planet Earth to continue, because business as usual is going to drive us off a cliff.
Yeah, it's terrifying, some of the things that we're seeing these days, and yet we can throw up our hands and say, "Oh, what the hell?" You know, I think it was the morning before I went to Social Media Marketing World, or the day after, and I was reading my news feed, whatever, and I think it was, I can't remember where I found it, but it was a big long article about plastics and plastic pollution. Oh, it was in Rolling Stone magazine.
Very cool.
Look it up. It was shocking.
Yeah.
And it's like a train heading towards a cliff, yeah, without any brakes. And it's like it's like no matter what there's no good solutions yet. It's a mess. It really is a mess. And we can't just say, snap, no single-use plastics overnight. So things like that. But you know what? There are smart people. There are innovative people. There are committed people that are realizing this. And hopefully in government too, that we'll find, there has to be a solution. After all, how did we live before single-use plastics? Was our quality life just so awful and terrible back then? It's nice to have the convenience of single-use plastics. It really is, but look at the cost. It's just, it's worse than carbon pollution in so many ways. We have an island of plastic in the Pacific Ocean that's bigger than the state of Texas.
Yeah. And what I'd say, Robert,
it's mind-boggling, and we need people to figure this out.
Right.
And we blew it. Our generation blew it. My generation blew it. We created all this stuff.
And certainly those are the lifestyle choices and the values that many of the most innovative people in the world right now are thinking about. Now, I don't pretend to have all the solutions, but what I can say is, and I talk about this very openly, and it's part of the reason I think my business has grown, not just a marketing strategy devoid of values. Whatever the marketing strategy is, let me say this again, marketing strategy devoid of values, you're part of the problem. If that's how you're approaching growing your business, you're old school and see you later. I can't help you, because that's not where we're headed. In my own personal life, for instance, I live in a tiny house. I live in a house that's smaller than some people's main bedroom suite, right? Now, am I advocating that everybody should live that way? No, but I'm very public about, I live downtown Albuquerque. I can walk to the grocery store. I can walk to the wine bar or the music venue or the movies, right? It's a walking lifestyle, living in a tiny home. And that's part of the choices I've made. And I'm very public, not from a like everybody should come to the same answer, but environmentally, I'm very aware that things like the choices we make in terms of where we live, how much we drive, what we buy or don't. I'm a minimalist who lives in a tiny home. I don't buy single-use plastics very much because I made choices that's not what my life looks like. And I made those choices based on a very significant dive into my personal values in awareness and relationship with where we are as a human family. And I talk about that in my business. Again, not from a place of this is the solution for everybody. Everybody should know, if you've got a family, you don't want to live in the size house that I live in. It's not right for everybody. But do I want you to be super clear about your values and make personal decisions and business decisions that reflect your values? Hell yeah. Matter of fact, if you don't, sorry, game over. Game over. You will not thrive in business if you're not paying attention to your values. I don't care what strategy you use. Millennials are smarter than that, and it's dripping up through the entire business environment. So if you're like that person who's just going from strategy to strategy, and why am I still struggling to get clients? I'm going to come back and say, maybe it's time for a deeper dive into relationship with your values, and give it a try being more explicit about the values part of your business and why Simon Sinek says start with why. And I think that's true in marketing as well. Why are you doing what you're doing? And how does it sync up with your sense of what you want this world that we live on to look like when we pass it on to our children and grandchildren? And if you're not asking those questions and not talking about that in your business, then you're just going from strategy to strategy.
Yeah. And, on the other hand, we have the multinational corporations, many who don't seem to be interested in this at all. The corporations that Trump wants to reduce pollution controls, open it up for whatever, growth for growth's sake. And it's a very competing ideology, and it's it's hard to believe, but there are many people that say, yeah, that's what we should have. We should have growth. Pollution will take care of itself. What's the big deal? And it's amazing the blindness that there is out there. We've been so conditioned to more is better.
Yeah.
More stuff is better. What's the old saying? The person who dies with the most,
with the most toys wins, right?
wins. Exactly. And what's wrong with that picture? Well, everything is wrong with that picture.
And part of what
quality of life is going down, down, down for so many people.
Yeah.
The economy is so-called going up. Well, how come homelessness seems to be increasing? Why is it that in Santa Cruz there are students that are going to University of Santa Cruz who are living on the streets?
Yeah.
It's so these amazing, wonderful things are happening. And on the other hand, we have this, and you see a lot of it.
And I made a decision a long time ago, Robert. What I see a lot of people doing is straddling those worlds. Yeah. I'm going to try to be kind of sort of on the side of like doing some value stuff, but I want to go too far in that direction, because if Monsanto wants to write me a big check, I'm going to take the check. Right. And like, I get it. And a long time ago, I said, you know what? That's not me. I'm not on planet Earth to help Monsanto or oil companies or people who are making single-use products that are like coming from China. It's not what I'm on this planet to do. And so what I do in the podcast is I feature people who have real businesses. Now, they may not be massive scale. The last episode, a guy named Gaston Martinez. Gaston is from Durango, Mexico, a rural town in Mexico. And what Gaston did is create a social enterprise using mezcal, right? So not tequila, but mezcal. It's a spirits company. But what do they have? Like, this is a place that's economically very challenged, and he wanted to help them in a way. The episode title is Introducing People to Your Hometown Through Your Business, right? What a beautiful idea. And what do they have in Durango, Mexico? They have agave cactus and water. So they take the agave cactus and a little bit of charcoal and a little bit of water, and they recycle the water in this very intentional way because it's in the desert. And through a process that's about 500 years old, they create mezcal, and they have 15 full-time employees, and seasonally that can go up much, much higher than that. These are really well-paying jobs. They're selling the mezcal in the US in places like Los Angeles and New York and Miami, and they're bringing the jobs to Durango, Mexico, to a place that he's from and he feels affinity for. And basically, they're creating a high-end, custom, sustainable product with nothing but water and sustainably they harvest it with machetes and burros, right? They literally, they cut the agave and they put it in the saddlebags and they walk the burros down to the factory, and then they make them the mezcal in the greenest factory they know how to produce. So they're recycling the water and all this stuff. And like, that's what I spend my time doing. And I'll do anything I can to like, hey, Monsanto, you're off track. But if there's no part of me that's like deeply plugged into that economy, my personal life and my business is this much more sustainable, values-based economy. And that's my best thinking about at least what integrity looks like for me in these very poignant times. Go find those stories and help those businesses grow and scale. If he could take it from 15 to 15,000, that's a whole lot less people that need to be doing something that's making plastic widgets or making toxic chemicals, right?
Right. You know, many of the people listening to this podcast are self-employed professionals that offer consulting services, coaching services, training services to business. And frankly, often to businesses that, you know, maybe are sometimes on the darker side. But it's not that often the employees in this company are great people. They're nice people. They have family values. But you know, I'm sure there are a lot of very nice people that work for Monsanto. But probably.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, if your values are, it's really about family values. That's what's most important to you. Then great, go find the people. I know for me, again, I live in New Mexico and I've been an outdoorsman my entire life.
Yeah.
It's why I moved here. Nature it's not some intellectual thing. I literally trail run and sleep in nature, and it's my church. I have 3 guys and we do trail running, and we joke, but it's not a joke. We call it the single track revival church. Single track is like, as opposed to a Jeep road, like a single pathway that's big enough for somebody to walk on, but not a car to drive through. It's not a Jeep road, it's a single track, right? One person or one bicycle. The single track revival church. It's a single track because that's where we feel most alive. It's revival because when we go there, we feel revived, we feel more alive. And it's church because it's the most sacred place on planet Earth for me.
Yeah.
That's my personal, so it's like, yeah, I hear you, family values. We try to be nice people while we're doing these horrible things to the planet. No, we're not a fit. You want to hire me? You want to be on my podcast? I don't care if Monsanto comes and wants to write me a big check. No, it's not a fit, right? So exactly. I'm going to push back on your audience and say, go a little deep. For me, in this time, like, are we going to survive as humans on planet Earth? I want your audience to go deeper in terms of their values.
Yeah. So, you know, think of, you know, what companies are doing great things. How could you help them be better, more successful companies? I mean, it's interesting because of your podcast, you're becoming a magnet to those kinds of companies.
They come to me because they want to get those stories out there, and I've created a mechanism. I literally own the modern equivalent of a radio station that's all about that kind of programming.
Yeah. So there are ways to reach them. There are a lot of companies trying to do innovative, environmentally sustainable, socially responsible things that make a difference, that make people happier. You know, mezcal is, you know, it's not growing potatoes, which are probably more necessary to the average person, but nothing bad. Now, mezcal is that turned into a drink like tequila, or is it?
Exactly. It's similar.
It's related to tequila.
It's somewhat similar in process, although there's a slightly different thing. And when you talk to Gaston, you know, it's not about like falling down drunk. In the culture, the mezcal is about celebration and community and doing something that you drink mezcal in his hometown when something significant's happening. Somebody's, you know, a birth happens, a marriage happens.
Sure.
Yeah, somebody dies. There's a life marking. You're coming together as a community. It's not like you drink tons of mezcal on every Friday. It's a sacred community-based drink. And personally, that aligns with my value. I mean, yeah, if I'm like somebody we have activists in Awarepreneurs that are sober activists, and that would be a no for them, and they shouldn't be telling that story, right? But what I'm just telling that the two things, if a listener only takes two things from our interview today, Robert, the two things that I would suggest, one is get much more clear about your values and be bolder. These are not for meek times. If you're meek and playing it safe and trying to get everybody to hire you, and you won't take a stand on anything, we were talking before we turned on the recording. Seth Godin, a very well-known marketing and business guru, says, if you try to market to everybody, you're marketing to nobody.
Right.
Okay? So be clear about your values and then get bolder with them. And then two, my other suggestion for your audience is to have your featured marketing channel. Make a stand somewhere in the structure of your marketing, right? Rumi, the famous poet, he talks about, and he's talking about in terms of spiritual paths, that what a lot of people in the spiritual path do is they dig a hole and they go 5 feet down, but there's no water there. And then they go try, they try Buddhist meditation and they try it for like 3 months, but they don't really get the full richness they're looking for. So suddenly they're on a yoga retreat and then they're doing the latest, hottest. And Rumi says, suddenly you have this landscape that's littered with holes, but no water. And the way you get water is you pick a hole and you dig it down to the water table, and it's going to be more than 5 feet, right? I see the same thing in marketing. So the two things I'm suggesting to your audience is go deeper with your values, know what they are, be bolder with that, and then bring those values into your featured marketing channel, your newsletter, or in my case, a podcast, or you got a YouTube channel, or you're writing a blog. Be bolder about those values and let people around you know, this is the place where I bring my highest quality attention to somebody who's not yet paying me money in front of a paywall. And that's what I'm teaching that's what I'm doing myself with the podcast. And that's what I'm teaching my clients. And it's working a lot better than those folks who are going from shiny marketing object to shiny marketing object and trying to appeal to everybody. And really, therefore, it kind of comes across as pretty tepid, pretty lukewarm, and it sounds like everybody else.
Wow. I think we got it.
we had to do round two, so Paul could be even more impassioned than he was last time, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's, talking to you is always a wake-up call. And, it's one reason I'm doing my interviews. And, I came up with the name of it, Being in Business, which I think is a pretty good title.
I love that name. I love it.
I think it's good. And I wanted, years ago, I did all these interviews for the More Clients Club with people on various marketing techniques, and that was good stuff. But it's sort of like, well, I've been there and done that. I mean, there's endless amounts of techniques, and some of them are good and some of them will work for you, et cetera, et cetera. But, this thing about values, about making a difference, about bringing who you are to your business, I think is more important than anything else, as you've just so brilliantly articulated. And so, that's my purpose, is to bring independent professionals on who can talk about that kind of stuff. And because I want to infuse that into my community and make them realize that, hey, this is just as, if not more important than the latest marketing strategy. I love marketing strategies. I mean, I created this model, I don't know if you're familiar with it, called Marketing Ball, where you go around the bases and
Oh, no, I haven't seen that one.
It's a fabulous model to understand communication. First of all, you get someone's attention, and then you engage them with information, and then you build a relationship, and so you go around and cover the bases. So that's wonderful stuff. But you could use that model for selling nuclear armaments.
Yeah.
So techniques like that in themselves are neutral. They're just techniques.
Right.
And if we're only focused on techniques, we're missing the deeper issue, is like, what is my business really about? What do I really stand for? Am I committed to really making a difference and lifting people up and inspiring them and helping them and helping their lives be more fulfilled, not just making more money. And it's so, it's so easy in marketing to go to the bottom line. The bottom line is, well, more money is better. And I've been seduced by that, by a lot of these marketing gurus that are making
Sure.
millions of dollars a year doing God knows what. And, one thing I realized is I just can't go in that direction.
Right.
I can do marketing, I can do this, but I can't, if it's just to make a lot of money, I hit a brick wall because it's just not me. And when I'm
We're going to go
communicating,
off a cliff, Robert. We won't survive if we continue that approach to business.
yeah, and I think, some bigger companies are waking up to this. They're waking up to this, that not only is it good PR, but ultimately it could even be more profitable to pollute less. It could even be more successful for everybody to take care of the environment. And, we can talk about the millions of social issues. I mean, it hurts my heart to see so many poor people. I was in San Diego. I had a Airbnb up the street, and I was in an area where my Airbnb was, where there were a lot of homeless people.
Yeah.
And you could, in this country of gazillions, why haven't we found a way to solve this yet? Because, making money for some small number of people is more important than helping all these people that are hard on their luck. And some of these people had good lives. They worked hard. They got sick. This and that happened. They had mental illness, whatever, and they're on the skids. And we've got to be taking care of everyone. Find a way. And I'm not talking about rampant communism, for God's sake. That doesn't work either. But we have the means and ability to do so much better than we're doing now. So much better.
What I just made the personal decision, Robert, because I agree with everything you're saying. I'm an activist, right? Business activism is my thing.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you're saying, but I'm not going to sit around and wait for Monsanto to decide that they want to do that. I basically unplugged from the single bottom line economy. I don't want to hear about it. You're not coming on my podcast if you're a single bottom line person. Period. End of sentence. There's nothing to talk about. And my entire professional energy, enthusiasm, networking, and who I work with is in this new economy. Call it triple bottom line or whatever you want to call it, right? This economy is not worthy of Paul Zelizer's attention. Period.
Yeah.
Done. There's nothing to talk about. If you're still waffling, I can't help you. Go find somebody else. I'm taking a stand for this economy with every cell in my body, every waking hour. It's what I dream about. It's what I think about. It's who I help. It's who I network. It's what I promote. And that's what I need to do to feel good about living in these really poignant times. I'm not saying that's the right solution for anybody else, but if somebody's waffling and then they're saying, well, Paul, I can't figure out how to get clients. I'm like, sorry, you're still waffling. You're like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, they say here in New Mexico. Go take that to somebody else. I'm here to help the people who have a deep commitment to their values. And in my opinion, in my experience, those people in this economy and where we are, and I only see it getting more true going forward, are having a much easier time growing their business than the people that are waffling and trying to, yeah, well, if Monsanto writes me a check, but I'd rather get a check from over here, but come on, give me money over here, give me money over here. And like, you know what? Go take that game to somebody else. I'm busy.
Yeah. Well, Paul, that might be a place to wrap it up.
That's where we wrap it up, huh?
I think we've said it. I feel inspired to go into my day and figure the next thing I'm going to do to get out there and make a difference. And hopefully some of the people that are reading this or listening to this will go, okay, I got it. Maybe I am selling out to the almighty dollar a little too much and not making values more primary to my business. And if we can move a few more people that direction, that is a good thing.
I think business is the biggest engine on planet Earth,
Yes,
right? And
it is.
harnessing up that energy into where our values are telling us we want the world to be, so we can pass it on to our children and grandchildren. I think it's the single biggest question we can be spending our time on these days. And again, I'm not going to answer what somebody else's values are, but I will say to your listeners, I don't know how to say it any more direct than I've already said it, that going deeper in the direction of knowing your values and bringing those into your business is the single biggest recommendation I can have to anybody who's not yet thriving in the way you want to.
Wow. Thank you very much, Paul. Thanks for taking the time to share passionately about what you're about.
Thank you so much for having me, Robert. And congratulations on the series. I love what you're up to.
Thank you very much.